Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to, Dustin's camera is not going to be able to get my, so who needs to see me, right? Here's my palette, which I just want to welcome everybody to the studio and thank you for the privilege of doing this. We're going to have a little fun tonight with color and palette knife. And my idea about palette knife portraits is that they are an exercise in color and in observation, and that they're not the kind of thing that you would use for a commissioned portrait, but just to study images, color, form. So we're going to go with starting with explaining my palette, which I have laid out here for you. The colors in here are, I use a limited palette. I use 6 colors. I use Viridian green, cobalt blue, permanent rose, cadmium red light, cadmium yellow light, and yellow ochre. And then I use black and white. Well, I don't really use black. I have it, but I don't use it. So that's my palette. And when I set up my palette, I usually start with the primary colors. I add secondary colors, and then I make tints around the sides. And I do all this so that I will stimulate my nerves in my eyes so that I have a keen sense of color when I approach my painting. So I've got all that around the edge, and then I mix a neutral in the center, and my neutral is made from a red and green mix, or cadmium, red light, and viridian green. And as I go along and I say green and red, rather than say the long name, that's what I'm nicknaming those colors so you all can know what I'm talking about. I mix green and red to get a neutral. That works very well, that neutral, for most Caucasians. Now, if you're mixing for a Native American, which is what we used to call red men, you use red also, but you use it in different proportions and with less white. And then if you're mixing colors, so you would use these same colors in here for a Native American. And then if you were going to do a black person, you would use all of these colors more pure colors and less tint. So now I have these pure colors in the middle, and then next to each one of those, I have the toned color, which is the color with the opposite. For instance, this is the blue that has orange mixed with it. And as you see, and most of you already know, these colors are all the earth tones. You can get them in a tube. They're ochres and umbers and siennas, and you can mix them all. And for instance, I buy yellow ochre in the tube. I don't mix. But this right here is the mixed yellow ochre from using yellow and violet to make a color, make an ochre color. It's too much work when you use so much ochre and flesh tones. I just buy the tube. Other than that, those are the colors that I use. I use a permalba white, mainly because I like the consistency. It's very buttery and really nice for palette knife painting. Okay, so that's basically the palette. Now, when I'm doing a portrait, I also mix some flesh tones over here. And these flesh tones, as you can see, are gradated down, tints here, down to pure colors here. And again, the red and the green, although this red also has some rose mixed with it, because I see a lot of rose in my subject's face this evening. So I'm going to be using some of that. And then I have green with ochre on this side and various amounts of white. And on this side, I have cadmium red and ochre, more red here, less ochre, more ochre here with less red. So it varies accordingly. And then I have graded amounts of white added. So then those colors mixed together make these beautiful shades of flesh tone, which I find that by altering these colors slightly, depending on the subject and the lighting. A lot of times the lighting will have more of an effect than the actual person's complexion. But I look at the setup and decide how much color I need. And I think I've got Will pretty well interpreted here. We'll see. If it not, it's a starting place anyway. And by the way, my model tonight is Will Persons, and he is he's a friend. I've known him for 40 years. His son and my son Dustin have grown up together, and Will and I, he's just been very willing to come. Will is willing, but anyway, he's agreed to come and sit for me, and I really appreciate it. So okay, now that is the palette. And the other thing I wanted to tell you was he has a wonderful lavender shirt on today. And in order to find that color, I mixed a neutral for the center, which I always do, lighter or darker, depending on what I see in my subject. And this, this lavender that he's wearing is somewhere in this range right here. That's the neutral with a little bit, not of the pure color mixed, but the tinted version of my violet mixed with the neutral. And that makes that nice color that I see on Will, although there's various shades of lavender and rose in his shirt. So anyway, that's where I begin. And so last night I sketched Will out. And when I do that, I'm going to switch to the canvas thing. When I start with the basic drawing, I measure, I proportion his face in, and then look for a shadow pattern. And I like to block it in rather than toning the whole canvas, which sometimes works well with a palette knife painting. But for a portrait, I prefer to do this where I have the darks laid in with a wash of black and cadmium red light, and then the lights are just pure Viridian. That I do so that when you do the strokes and put your palette knife strokes in, there's always going to be little bits of the canvas showing through. And if it's the green on the light side, it fuses together in your eye and you don't see it as patchy. And the same thing with the dark areas. When you lay your dark tones into that dark wash, it makes a great fused in there, a little bit of the red glowing through, and it just works. Hopefully it'll work today. All right, so I have a sketch. I let that dry overnight, and now we're ready to go. And I am a traditionalist from the word go, and so I start with the darks and I work to the lights. It works well, especially in palette knife. Once you put your lights on, it's hard to get the darks in. So I have an array of palette knives, and I wanted to just for a minute tell you about them. And there's two different kinds. I mean, not kinds. Let me just hold these up right here. I got it. Oh, you got them? All right. These palette knives are different shapes for different purposes. But one thing that I have found that I like is these palette knives that are Italian palette knives are higher. The trough area, which is the angle here, is higher than the
Cheryl,
yeah.
interrupt you for a minute. Which camera are we looking at right now for your palette knives?
Dustin Bushy.
Dustin Bushy.
Okay, let me highlight that one. Hold on.
Okay.
Maybe hold it up in front of this so we can see it better.
Okay. Well, then it can be on the other.
Not just, all right, whatever.
You can hold it in front of the canvas and we can see it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. If you can see that, let me get a different one to show you here. The difference in the angle, there is deeper, there's more depth here. And that means you don't get paint on your knuckles when you're using this one, because I put on a thick coat of paint. And with some of your more shallow palette knives, I end up brushing my knuckles on the canvas. So I prefer these, that they're made in Italy, and I don't know the names, I'm sorry, but you can find them. But that's the reason I like them. They're a little springier also, and if you can see, they're forged here at the base of the blade, as opposed to the let's see, this one shows it. It is one piece of metal that is just flattened and bent. It's not forged. So that's kind of why I like the others the best. And that's just my personal preference. Just thought I'd let you know that. And I have an array of palette knives, and I have one that I have used so much that you can see it's bent. This is, for some reason, I pick it up a lot. And I like the way it bends. If I have a curved area that I think is real important, say the shirt edge of the collar, that I want to make a nice curved line, I have a blade that is curved, and I can take that and curve it. I use wrong one. I have a right-handed and a left-handed. So this one is curved this way. I can just do that, and it just goes in there. We'll see how that works when I get to that. So that's the palette knives. The flat ones, of course, are the mixing knives. And for big paintings where I need to mix a lot of paint, I use these larger palette knife mixing knives. So there we go. I'm going to start with a medium size tip, not too rounded, to lay in a couple of darks. And on Will, his neck right here is the darkest spot. That is where no light is getting to. So I'm going to start with that. And I'm analyzing it, and I already know that his shirt is lavender. So I'm going to look that direction for a dark. And so I'll go over here to my palette, and this neutral that's made with the lavender and a little bit of yellow is going to be a nice dark neutral. If I put bright purple, it would be too bright. So I'm just going to lay that in right there, just with my palette knife. It has some warmth to it. It's not just a dead color. And then there are some darks under his chin, but they are more warm. So I'm going to go over here to this color that I've mixed, and I'm going to put, there's two spots right here on his chin, one right here and one right up. That one's a little bit warmer. So I'm going to add a little bit of warmth to it and put this dark in right here. Okay, that one's warmer, that one's cooler. That kind of defines his chin. Put your head down just a bit. And now we're going to do his, I'm just going to do corners of eyes and mouth, just with this same kind of warm color that I fixed over here. His mouth is extremely warm, so I'm going to add a little extra red to that and put in a line right there. And then if you watch me, you'll notice that the way I get my strokes is by how I turn my wrist. That's important. You can't do a palette knife if you can't turn your wrists. I mean, it would be hard. I'm sure somebody's going to say, hey, I can, but I can't. So, okay, that's a corner of a mouth. And then I'm gonna do this. Actually, that's a little darker right there, but there, the other corner is not as dark, and that's because his mustache covers the dark part. So I'm gonna go back to a little, maybe back here, not quite so much intensity on that, and put in this dark right there. Okay, now nostrils, we know, are always kind of dark red. They're not quite as red as the palette knife show, as this palette red. It would need to be darker than that. So I'm gonna take some of this and add a little bit. This one is the rose and the cadmium together make a pretty pure red. So that's the red that I'm using for his nostril. I'm using the toned color of that, but I'm gonna tone it even more with some green that I made here out of yellow and viridian to make it a kind of a true green. And I'm gonna make that even darker. So I have this very dark, but it's not black, and it's a color that has some life to it. So we put a nostril there, and it's smaller here, and we're going to have two colors on that side because it turns warm real quick. So I'm going to go move over on the color wheel one stage or one level and put some red right there. So now he has some life to his nose. Now I'm going to go back here to my flesh tones. I see a nice dark right under here. And now the other darks that I see are the ear, which is back to this deep red here, maybe even deeper, maybe over here. On this side, right there, and on the other side, it is not bright red, but it's pretty red, right up to the cheekbone, right there. So it's not much different than painting with, now the other part of the ears also have some dark, but it has a touch of his skin tone in it, which makes it a little lighter. So I'm going to add a little bit of light here. Still a toned red, fairly intense, and I'm going to put a spot right here of that. And then on the other side, it's going to take, I'm just going to move over just 1 degree to this next color and do the darker edge right here, like that. Okay, that's not so hard. And then while I'm here with these colors, I'm going to keep on looking for dark areas. There's a dark, oh, I missed it. When I miss it, I wipe it off, or you can scrape it off. But by the way, I'm working on a canvas covered board as opposed to a regular stretched canvas. And they're a little different to work on. I like them both. I don't have a preference. I just kind of like, with palette knife, everything needs to be sturdy. The easel needs to be sturdy. You can't do palette knife with a soft touch. You have to have something to where you can push on it. I mean, this is wobbling a little bit. And I also put this 2x4 under my canvas because I wanted wheels. I wanted the head up a little bit, and my ceiling, if I go any higher, I'll hit the fan. So with my easel, so I just use that board. improvised. Okay, now we got back to, I'm going to use the same deep red. Maybe I'll go back over here to this one. And he's got a nice edge right there. And the edge on that side is a little lighter. So we're going to go right there. Now, those are the darks, mostly. There's some more. There's another very warm dark red right here. And then on this side of the collar is another dark area, but it's not as dark as the other side. So I'm going to use the violet and add a little more red to it, and I'm going to add a touch of lighter red to it to make a color that will work without jumping out at you. And so we're going to define the edge of his cheekbone right there. I didn't have enough paint on my palette knife. Let's try that again. It's a good idea to, and that curves down this way. Maybe a little deeper curve. There we go. Just to define, that's a dark area that I did not mean to put in when I was sketching, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that. And I just put a little bit of flesh tone in there. It might be right and it might be wrong. All right, we're gonna do the dark side of his face next, and I'm going back to my flesh tones for that. And I might need to mix some more of this. And this is, again, the two mixtures that I have. I see a lot of warmth in Will's shadows. Now that's partly because of the lighting that I have, and partly because he just has a nice suntan. So I'm going to go over here and just kind of lay that in. That's a spot that's dark, and a spot right there that's dark. And it's just pieces of color. You can do it with a brush, or you can do it with a knife. It's now the next spot that I see, I'm starting to see variations. And I try not to do that too soon, but I'm trying to define the edge of his face. So I'm going to put that in right there. That's a neck color. And it gets a little bit warmer. Actually, what it's reflecting is a little bit of violet from the shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and say, we'll have some violet right there on his flesh tones. Now that line isn't there, so we just drag it that way. If I had more paint, it would work better. There we go. Actually, there's a lot of spots that have violet around his neck. And I see that not only right here, I'm going to lighten it up even more. Oh, the next one is even warmer than that. So I'll do that later. All right, so back to the reddish color right there. And then it's right here. And then it gets even redder. So I'm going to go a little bit more towards the redder side of this mix. And it goes right in here. Not need to go to the next stage higher. And I go back and forth between these colors as I see them. So now we have spot right there. And then there is a toned shade. It's not really that much darker, but it's cooler. Right in here next to it. And then as it goes down, it gets warmer again and lighter. So I move over to that lighter color and go up here like that. Now, if it were a lovely lady instead of a rugged individual, go ahead, you can cough. I would be more likely to use a brush. I mean, that's just all there is to it. If the subject warrants a brush, a nice smooth,
Hey Cheryl, this is Donna. It's been about
Yeah.
20 minutes. You want to
Okay.
model, take a break?
I think take a little break and let Will relax for a minute. So at this point, I guess I will take some questions if anybody has them.
Okay, Cheryl, we've got some coming in. Rosie Coleman wants to know, what kind of canvas are you using? What do you like to work on?
Well, I like linen, of course. This is just a store-bought board made by Fredericks, I think, that is canvas covered. But stretched canvas of any kind. I honestly do not have a preference. I like a coarser texture for men, and if that's just want. We can help him down.
Do
Just give him.
you prefer a hard surface for palette knife or a flexible surface?
I like a hard surface, but I have found that in my large palette knife paintings, say 4x4 feet and larger, you can't. They're so heavy that they are just ridiculous. So I like my larger palette knives. I've been doing them on canvas, stretched canvas.
Okay. Donna, can you put the focus back on Cheryl's palette for a minute? Joni Bruce wants to know, what type of board do you use for your palette?
Okay, this board is one of those dry marker boards that you buy at the hardware store.
That's large. What size is that?
I'm not sure. I think the reason I'm not sure is because I bought it at a yard sale. And so it's about
4 feet.
Let's say it's large, large palette.
that's 48 inches. So it's about 44 inches by 26, something like that.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions about your colors. If you could explain the flesh tones again, and questions about your palette knives again. And
Let's take those two to start
okay.
with. Okay, the flesh tones that I paint are mixtures of cadmium red light, yellow ochre, and white down this side, and and yellow ochre and viridian down this side, with great amounts of white, as you can see. Tints, lightest tints here. You go down to where you have no white at all down here. And then
Cheryl, we don't see the bottom that well. We see the Kleenex box. Can you move the palette down or the camera down? We don't see the, there you go. We couldn't see that. Thank you.
okay. All right. So this is the ochre and cadmium red light, and this is the ochre and in green in various mixtures. And generally, it's redder to yellower. It depends on the subject. If I'm painting a very delicate skin, it might be less yellow ochre and more, a little bit more rose in it. I might add a little rose, and I did add a little rose down here on this one. That's not cadmium red. That is this color that I mixed between cadmium red and rose. I have another red there, and it's still even darker than that. So it depends. There's the rose, and sometimes that's just, you just have to evaluate your subject. It doesn't always, it's not the same for anybody. It's a individual as their individual features, the color of their skin, and so I work to get something that is.
Cheryl,
Yes.
we also have a question about your color mixing system and
Uh-huh.
the circle layout, and also, yeah, the arrangement on the palette. And what's the advantages of using this arrangement to you?
Okay, this palette, the big advantage is that I see all the colors at one time. And on a palette knife painting, if you have the colors already mixed, then you can save time, as opposed to getting out your tubes of white and redoing. This much color I will never use on this portrait, but I have another commission that I'm working or getting ready to start on that is a 4 feet, 6 feet palette knife painting. So I'll use all this. And so I did this more for demonstration as a color lesson in how I achieve those colors. But I do use it. This is basically what I use. I just don't use as large a pile of paint.
Okay.
I always have a neutral with some tints added to it because they make such beautiful colors, and I see those colors a lot of times. His colors are a little darker and less subtle, but it just depends. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great, Cheryl. You want to start back on the model?
Yes, I do. All right. Okay, this right here, there's a transition color right there. While I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and put that in, and it's a red it's a toned red, but very intense, right where where the shadow goes. I'm going to push it that way to give it a little life, and then right here where his contour of his body changes, and now this part is catching light. This is the base of his neck, and this is the beginning of his chest. That's lighter. So I'm going to go to a lighter tone over here on my mixture. It still might need to be a little redder because of Will's sunburn. And I guarantee you, this guy spends a lot of time outdoors. There's no doubt. So I'm going to put that there. Still not light enough. Try this. Add a little lighter green.
Are we back in the regular meeting or?
Yeah.
Still on the break?
Back in regular
Okay.
meeting. So now this goes this way. And sometimes your strokes have an effect. So if I put this stroke this way, it kind of adds to the idea that that's a changed contour. And in palette knife, everything is so suggestive that that's a good idea. All right, I just dragged that red back in there a little bit. Okay, now let's do some more on the face. Up here I see a very interesting group. It's up in here somewhere. This right in there. It's green to me. It's really not. But in comparison, it's green. And then I'm going to go to the shadows on the nose next. Let's see if we can get. I don't want to run out of time before I give him a nose, you know. redder. And when I'm painting, I talk to myself all the time, redder, greener, darker, lighter. Right there. And then he has some more of that green coming up, which we often see in I went too far, eyebrows. I don't see it over here as much, maybe a little bit right in here. But now his nose is pretty red. The side of it, there's a dark spot that comes right down here. And you notice I haven't changed my palette knife yet. I don't know if anybody knows or not, but with a face, once you get something that's comfortable in your hand and it's working, no need to change. Now I'm going to go over here and use a little pure color on this part right here, like that. And then I'll use the same. I might have to adjust it, but that'll work for the time being. Now the base of his nose and his nostril are different colors. There's a spot right there though. And again, I'm using pretty bright red colors. That's the ball of his nose. And then that we've already put that part in. Nope, it's redder. There is a spot that I see right under the bottom part of his nostril. Is redder. That might have been too red, but we'll see. And then, yeah. The reason it's too red is not really that it's too red, but it's catching light from above because it's a thick stroke. So I'm just going to take the bottom half of that off. And with palette knife, your light catching on the texture is very important. This side I made a little too red, so I'm going to go back and clean that up with a little bit lighter. Now it's already red there. So now I'm going to be mixing on the canvas because I'm changing this color that was too red. I'm going to put a lighter shade over it and drag it through to make it right. And I can take this color right up here and push it up there. All right, now we have a mustache that we have to work with, the mouth. I'll put a little bit more like that. Will has an interesting mouth in that it's just interesting. The shadows that are created are pretty cool. I'm going to do this under his mouth. Would you put your chin down just a hair? There we go. This comes up higher. Right there. Turns to green. Right here. Same value, just turns to green. Let's go to the chin. I'm trying to get all of these dark patterns in to start with. There is the intense color right in here. And then it turns rose, but it's a lighter. I'm gonna move over here on the side and add a little bit. Still adding a little green to cool it down or tone it down. But he has a red chin right there. And then it goes very toned. Right here. and then light, with still a lot of greenish color showing. No, it's not green. It's lavender. You would think it would be green, but it's not. I would think it would be green, but it is lavender. So I'm going to go with adding to my flesh tone a little bit more. Up. Little lighter. And I'm going to use that same right there. Thinking it through, I see another the violet accent under his chin. Too dark. Palette knife painting is a lot like icing a cake. There's not that much difference. As a matter of fact, well, I made a cake for my son when on his 40th birthday, another son, and we wanted to do a comic book figure, and so I used palette knives to ice the cake, so I could paint it. Do whatever I wanted with it. Okay, so we got that. Base of the nose, I think we need to finish that up. And it has that lavender on it too. I'm gonna put that in first. Lavender right here. And there's a little bit right there. And I don't care if it looks like a big glob of paint. I want it to look good from across the room, not necessarily 10 inches away from the canvas. So a lot of people that bothers, it doesn't bother. No, I'm gonna do a little darker. It's a little roser, more rose. Right on the end, right there. And then it gets a lot lighter and warmer right here. Okay. Let's see. I feel like I'm slowing down a bit and we need to keep it going pretty quick. So I'm going to, Will's got a nice expression on his face. You can tell he's a happy person.
Cheryl, can you tell us a little bit about your model? How long have you known him and everything?
Yeah, I've known Will for 40 years, and he is he's a native of this area. Grew up in Uchee, Alabama, which is 7 miles from here, and he is worked for the telephone company when I first met him. And let's see what else. He's retired now. He's that's really all I can think of to tell you.
Has he posed for you before?
No, it's not. I see this. It might be too strong, but I'm going with it just the same. I'm starting to feel like if I don't hurry up, I'll cover this whole face with color, and I want to make sure that I do. Dark, 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 dark. Little liner. Another point of if you haven't tried palette knife before, it's important to remember what side of the knife you put your paint on. Sometimes you scrape to the right and sometimes you scrape to the left, and then you have color on both edges, and you can use this edge and then this edge. Why is that right there? And there's a I'm kind of getting ready to go to the light side. I'll come back and put some more color in. I kind of like have something to compare with now. Some of these areas are not painted yet, but if you remember what I said when I started was that the red background, or the red, just kind of pulls it all together. And so even though I don't have all the spots on the face covered, it's still enough to have a good comparison.
Cheryl, I think you're due for a break whenever you want to take it.
Okay, we'll go, maybe 5 more minutes. Let's,
Okay.
and then to, are you okay, Will? Okay. Hmm? Yeah, if you haven't seen it done before, it's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna do a green kind of line right there. Doesn't look too green, but it is. He's got a lot of rows in his face, and Will was a tow-headed kid when he was little, and he just has that, even though he's suntanned, he's got a lot of peaches and cream kind of colors in his face. I'm going to put a little bit of, I guess I got The ears are important, way more important than people give them credit for. They're as individual as any other feature. And when I was in 4th grade and I was in a special art class, way back then, our teacher had us go home and draw ears, just ears. We had to have 5 different sets of ears, one from the side and one from the front. And then the next week we had to do noses. It was a fun art class. Earlobe. There's a little light right there. So, and it doesn't take much to suggest it. Okay, let's take a little break. How about if we take a little break and we'll take some more questions? Okay. What paint brands do you like? I use these for palette knife painting. I use these Winton colors, the huge big tubes, because I use a lot of paint. But if I'm doing a fine portrait, I use, I guess you guys can see that. Winsor Newton is what I normally use. I've been using it for 40 years and I keep thinking I'm going to try some of the new colors and I just never do. So I don't think it matters. When I've done paintings with, I mean, it matters personally what you like, you use, what you're comfortable with. But if you're good, you can make any brand of colors and make what you want. Have I ever used the water-soluble oil paints? I have, and they're okay. They don't mix the colors as rich. At least I didn't feel like they were working as well. They just didn't blend as well for me. But if you are allergic to turpentine fumes, they are definitely an option. And I think my sister had them for a while, and I used them, and we did some nice paintings with them. So it's not so much the brand of paint as it is the sense of color that you have. And I believe that you can develop a keen sense of color. I think those cones in the back of your eye that sense color, not dark and light, need to be stimulated, honed, just like any other sense in your body. You can, I think you can improve that. And so you can make any paint work. When I do my mural painting, I use regular latex house paint. And I can get the same colors if I just start with my basic limited palette in pure color. And usually it takes me 3 hours. Well, I take that back. The question is, how long does it take to paint a palette knife portrait start to finish? And I'm assuming you're talking about a head study. Usually about 3 hours with the sketching in, but I like to do that. I like to do it in 2 sessions because I like the background to be totally dry when I start. If you do it and then go right into the painting, you can lose some of your drawing. And to me, the drawing has to stay accurate for the palette knife painting to hold together.
That's the last question.
Last question, okay. I also liken this to pastel painting. And I think that pastels are really closely related to palette knife painting in that you just put on strokes, especially if you turn you use your wider pieces of pastel and you put wedges of color in. It's a lot like palette knife. The difference is you can go over top one color with another color more easily with a palette knife than you can, with a pastel. You go over it more easily. With palette knife, you can do that, but you have to let it dry, usually 2 days. And then you can go back over and you can drag or scumble colors one across the other. So, but it really works best if it's all fresh, wet paint and it blends and picks up the colors around it and all that. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, we'll get Will back here. How are we doing on time?
7:07.
Okay, so we have another hour for us? An hour, yeah. Okay,
Yes, you got another hour, Cheryl.
all right, that's good. All right, we'll just do a few, want to do that. It's getting sleepy.
Just, I was at the yawn.
It is just pieces of color, like any other painting. This is just a different tool, and so it's a little more challenging, but what it forces you to do is really look at colors and shapes more than details. You're not looking at the shape of the iris or anything like that. It's just about the basics. Now, Will's got some wrinkles in his forehead, which I don't want to overstate because I don't want him to look much older than he is. So he's the same age as I am, so we have to stick together here.
We do.
And so I'm just gonna slightly indicate his wrinkles in his forehead. All right, you ready? Yeah, that's good right there. Wrinkles usually have contour with them. They're not straight lines. They are, I don't know how to say it, except they just have a light side and a dark side. So that's probably enough, just a little. And then a nice warm shadow. I'm running out of this color paint. A shadow that kind of his hair makes right there, and another little spot that I see right there, and then a very distinct spot where his hairline actually goes back right there. And we'll do a little more right in here. Bring that up a notch. As you can see, I'm moving up the scale on or the value scale on my flesh tones, and I'm getting to the lighter colors right here, right here. There's one more wrinkle there. It's a very subtle, but I want to make sure I get it. Okay, a little color. A little more red. Right in here. And right there. And he has that. Okay, we're gonna go with, that's enough for the dark pattern. I'm gonna put in the light pattern, then come back and tweak it some more. I think the hair will go first. On this side, we have a shadow that's kind of bluish. Will is also doubling as our tech man. We were talking yesterday when I was doing the sketch. He was a telephone man so long ago that he doesn't know much about the new.
No, nothing.
And I went to art school so long ago. I went to a commercial art school. And everything that I learned in commercial art school is obsolete. Everything. Nothing. They don't do anything the same. Okay, I'm going with some nice blue right here. And this is where I like to push the color a little bit and make it I'm using lavender there. Now I'll go a little darker. Right in here. And this is that neutral that I mixed on the violet. And that's going to be, okay, now I can't have you with your, not allowed to do that. Right there, where it kind of blends together. And then there's that one spot right there that's not that purple, but it's purple. You drag that over top of it. Now, the light that I have set up, I've got one light bouncing off the ceiling, which is the primary light. And then I have a secondary light that is coming in from the other side, which is a cooler light. So we have the warmer light that's closer. The reason I bounce it off the ceiling is because I don't like hard edges. It's bad enough when you're painting a palette knife, but if you have very strong light and dark patterns, you just don't see as many colors. So that's why I do that. Now his, back to his hair. Go back here to these center colors here, somewhere between lavender and blue. I see this right in there. And then it turns very light blue. I'm just going to go with the light blue by itself and see what happens here. Nope, that's not enough. Get some white and lighten that up some more. And I'm going to put a little bit of my neutral with it. And a lot of his hair looks yellow on the sunny or light warm side. But right here, there is a beautiful lavender shade, which I bet you that's why his wife picked that shirt for him, because she knew he had lavender tones in his hair. I don't know why she picked it. Okay, there you go. And then that same kind of color. Oops, that's too dark anyway. Let me get out of there. It's a little rosier. Right in here. Whoops. When you pick up paint you don't want, you just scrape it off and go again. Okay, right here. Only drag down. If you drag up, you're going to pick up color. So that, and then we go lighter. But still in the, well, it's not quite as lavender. It's a little more neutral. Maybe right in here somewhere. Lavender, but toned lavender for this part. Don't have the right palette knife here to do this. Getting a bigger palette knife so that I can control the strokes, the larger strokes. This all kind of, when you drag it through that wet paint, it does some wonderful things. Now we got a little bit, I need to bring this down, but I want to do it after I paint the forehead. So I'll hold off on that. I do see a little lavender right there, or red or something. I don't know what it is. And then it's, I'm just trying to put in a little patches of color now to gauge what I need. I want to see the hair color so that I know where to go from there. I don't want to overdo this white hair, but it needs to be lighter than that.
Cheryl,
Yes,
a couple questions. What size canvas are you working on today?
11 by 14. And I normally make my head, no, not quite life size, unless it's just a little 8 by 10, I might do a life size, but I prefer to make it a little smaller than life size. My hand span is 8.5 inches, so his head is about 8 inches, and it's 11 by 14.
Another one, at what point will you start defining the background?
If I have time, it'll be the last thing I do. I want to use the background to create the edge of the face here. So I know I'm going to do that at some point. And I'm so glad somebody asked that question because I have to do something here that I forgot. I wanted to put this behind him because I don't like the color of the chair next to his skin. It's too much like his skin color, and for the composition's sake, I want something more neutral. So there you go, that's much better. So now that I did that, the question was, when do I do the background? At any moment, when I start working on that cheek right here, and I want to define that edge, that's when the background will go in, and a little bit of the shirt. Still needs to be yellower on that. Here. I've already put in a neutral up there, so this is going to be pretty pure color right here. And if you turn your palette knife kind of sideways, you can do a whole different kind of stroke as opposed to dragging it forward. You have to experiment. Okay, I'm going to do the light tones next.
Okay, we're coming up on a break in just a few minutes, Cheryl.
Okay,
So whenever you're ready.
all right. I think we're going to wait a minute, well, about 5 minutes, and then I will take that time maybe to mix some more color if I decide I need it. Okay, I see a lot of green in his forehead. Put your chin down just slightly. There we go. Especially right here. On the other side of that same, it's a warmer shade. So right in here, it's warm, not that dark. That's not what I wanted. Let me spit that off. There we go. Okay, now to do the contours on the face, I want to look at the side plane of his forehead from the eyebrow to the hairline going back that way is a different color than when from the corner of the eyebrow this way. So I see a much greener shade. It's not darker, it's just greener. So I'm going to go this way for that color right there. Might get a little bit redder at the bottom. So I'll turn my knife and go this way, drag it up. It gets even darker right here. It's kind of hard working with a camera in your face, but we're going to do it. Anyway, then we have this bone catching this a bone around his eye socket catching a whole different kind of light. So that's lighter and warmer right in here. And that color comes this way. I'm gonna put the red in first though. There is some, it's a little lighter red right in here. And then it gets warmer as it goes that way. I'm looking to see if I have any more of that color that I need. Right there. And there's some. Let's see. Side. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Put it in the wrong place. It was down here that I wanted it. Okay, well, I'm gonna give you a break so I can mix up a little bit more color. Maybe not. You can just sit there now. I'll mix.
I mean, I'm fine.
Okay. If you'll notice, these colors I'm looking for them at the same turn in the angle of the whole face, the whole head. Everything that is at a 45-degree angle from I see a little of that over here. It's red right there. It's red right there. Right there. Right there. Right there. And pretty red right here. Now I'm gonna move to the next color, a little lighter. And we're gonna go in here. And see if I can't not cover up the lines that I made in actually just painting it with a palette knife. You can make character lines there, but we're gonna just do this. I think I better move a little warmer, a little redder. Okay. It still needs to be a little redder. Cooler. So that add a little green with it. right there. These edges where his face is turning away, you can see some real nice flesh tones that are kind of greenish that are going that way. And there's a little bit of light right there that kind of takes the contour of the head back. Now a very interesting light spot right here. This is a cool light. And then on the other side, a similar angle, but it's a warm light. And then we've got for those of you who don't like texture, well, we're going to have plenty of it in this painting. I think I'll go with the, I know y'all are dying for me to do the mustache. So I think I will start with that underneath the mustache, there's a shadowy spot that is dark, cool. I'm going to use neutral, back to my red and green, but I want it to be warm, but not too warm. So I'm going to put that right there. And then on the other side, it has more lavender look to it. That spot that I put the paint in the wrong place, needs to be gone because it will mess up that white or that light mustache color. Okay, now the mustache has form. It's thick. That's the underneath part of it. You can see his upper lip peeking through a little bit. Right here. A little bit more paint. This goes down a lower. And his mustache is a little bit crooked. Sorry, Will.
It's all right. It's quickly, quickly.
But I do see blue on this side. Where it's coming from, I don't know. That's too blue. So we'll put some light lavender over top of it, which is what I see right there. Real pretty right in there. And it's darker. This is darker. Put a little darker neutral on that. Right there. I see pink too. Right there. And I don't know why I picked Will, because I've never done a palette knife painting of somebody with a mustache before.
Maybe you just wanted to practice.
Challenges, that's what I like. Now, go to our left. Not that way. Try yellow and Luca. On this side right in here. Right here is where I see the lightest spot. And with palette knife, you don't always put the light on last. Or for me, I don't. I want to, there's comparisons and I work it. Trying to get everything working together. Okay, back to the skin tones. We gotta go. Go up here to these lights. I see that. I want to take that off right there. That's too much paint, too hard to contend with. Get that little that side. The other side, not so much, and it's a little not as bright. Right there. A little greener in the corner of the eye. Right there. You pick up the wrong color paint, make sure you wipe it off before you try again. Okay, all right, there, and there. Obviously not getting enough paint on my knife.
Excuse me.
Cheryl, this is Donna. I got a
Yes.
question. I didn't want to interrupt you. I love this. Um, is about 20 till 9.
Okay.
And my question is, can you keep painting? When do you want to stop? If you want to keep going, if anybody needs to leave, they can leave, but you can keep painting. That's up to you.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to, can you sit for 20 more minutes without moving?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just finish putting these flesh tones in here and I'll do a little bit around and then we'll do some tweaking. So I'll try to get most everything covered in the next.
I wasn't trying to hurry you. I just thought if you wanted more time, if anybody, they wanted to leave, they could, or you could keep painting. I'm giving you the choice.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep painting for at least another half an hour.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And we have a couple questions. If you want to take a short break too, we could get in a couple of those.
Go ahead and ask the questions.
One of them's an easier one, I think. One is, what kind of easel are you using? Is it a commercial or a self-made? Michael makes his own easels, so that's why he's asking.
Actually, it's a very old one. I've had a long time and I have no idea what type it is. And I have about 8 and I just, this is the one that I'm using today. Depends on, I've got, I don't know. That's
Tell
terrible.
them that I'm, if they look at my camera, they can see the easel.
Yeah, if you'll look at the other camera, Dustin Bushy camera, you can see it more easily. And
And I can come around and look at it from the back as well, see if.
yeah, but honestly, I don't know the brand names of anything. Everything, all my stuff that I've had, I've had for so many years that.
This is good. Dustin's kind of showing you working at your easel. He could kind of pan around a little bit and show your environment maybe.
Yeah, sure, that'd be fine. Okay, that's good. Yeah, we're gonna do it.
And Cheryl, if you have an interesting studio, if you want to talk to people about it while you're working here, I don't want to interrupt you, but it's really
Yeah.
a place.
Well, I'll tell you what. Normally, I would say, okay, I'll talk about it. But since we're on
The time's
shortened time, I want to make sure that I am focusing.
yeah.
So I can't do that right now. That'll be for another time. How about that?
Yes, we might do a video, let you video your studio later, but yeah, focus on your painting. I like this view.
I'm at a point where I'm having to kind of blur my vision to see what I want to do next. Because the painting is getting to be very textured. And let's see, this red comes down here and then goes back up that way. There's a little more red. Right along the edge of his cheekbone, it's very red right there. Not that red, but when I drag it, that'll be just right. And that same color from where I am follows down the contour of his cheek there, like that. A little greener though. Especially right here, where it's kind of in, it's not a shadow, it's just a contour difference change. Definitely on the greener side than the color next to it. So I'm picking up things that I didn't know were there. And then we have this great warm glow right here. And there's a light spot right there. There's a let's see here. Too dark. That right there. And I love that rose color in his chin right there. And then it goes from there to a lighter pinky shade right in here. There we go. And there's some of that right there too. A little bit, not as pink, not as light. And this is an interesting color right in here. It is a halftone, one little touch of light catching it. So I'm gonna make it. Don't fall asleep on me now, Bill. Will. Whatever your name is.
I think you get me a real good map this afternoon.
Uh-oh. You know, I have an advantage. If I don't get finished, Will can come back tomorrow. We can get this thing done. I don't know. Let's go that way, back there. Now, where were we? I was trying to make that mustache. Oh, needs to be darker. I'm just now just kind of, there we go. Pull that into there. And I don't know what that is. I think that's canvas show right there. Needs to be pretty red right there.
Cheryl, do you always wear gloves while you paint?
When I'm doing palette knife, I try to. It's not for health reasons. It's because it stains my fingernails too. Because I get it all over my hands for sure. Now there is a neat color right here. It is also a halftone. Very green, but warm compared to the colors around it. Nope. Too much color underneath. I could probably finish this painting without ever touching my palette. I could just push paint around, and there's enough paint on this canvas actually to paint 2 portraits, or maybe 3. A little bit of red right here. This is the time when I need to be extra careful about dragging paint, because now we have all this wet paint all over the canvas, and if I'm not careful, I'll pick it up and without knowing it, move it around to some place that I don't want it. I see a pretty pink right here. I want to do that first because it's a very thin line, and then I'll go back over it with the other color that I C, which is kind of red. How are we doing for time? I need to know when we,
7:52.
okay, I was gonna say, I need to put in a little bit of color in the background before I do any more. Just,
And that was Alabama time. It's 8:52
yes,
It's 8:52.
Georgia time.
right. Will, look right at me for just a minute. I'm doing your nose. Keep looking at me. There's the little pink right in there. Okay, I'm going to switch to a larger, I'm going to do a fairly neutral background, but I think it has awkward overtones. So we're going to do maybe that color up here. And then a lighter shade of that right here. That up here. We'll color the ear later. What I wanted was the same value behind the head here. Different color, the same value. So that kind of a toned down version of this blue, because I don't want the edge of the head to be the first thing you look at. I'd like to keep the form from being, the outline of the form from being a dominant element. I want to keep those edges values similar. So we go lighter here. And then back to the, and see this, that's too bright next to that red ear, that's not going to work. So I'm going to use the toned down version of that bluish green. Now that's better. See, the air doesn't pop out like it did before. When I started to lay that blue next to it, even though it's still a pretty strong contrast, value-wise, it's not. So that helps it to keep it. Let's put a couple of strokes of lavender in for the hair, for the shirt, which I already have the color kind of mixed. There's a, this is when the edge of the palette knife is good for these little, would you put your hand down, please? Sorry. Not enough. Just a nice little thin line there. Oh, if I can get it.
All right, we're starting to run low on battery on
Okay.
the cameras.
All right. Well, I need a little more pinker shade right here. Lighter. And tone down purple for the inside of this shirt. Right here. And right in here. Gets a little redder. Okay, are we out of time?
It's 7:59. 8:59.
All we need is some color on his ear. Right here. Okay, that's what we're going to do for today. Well, I can do some more, but I know the time is up. So what do y'all want me to do?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Cheryl. If you want to finish it later and share the finished image with us, that'd be great. But you have done a phenomenal job, and I couldn't be happier. I loved it. So I just thank everybody for joining us, and I especially want to thank Margaret and Dustin for all they did to make this happen. This is our first attempt at Zoom meeting, and like I said, we've got a lot of people involved over here trying to do different parts of it. So thank all of y'all for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation by Cheryl, because she's done a phenomenal job. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Will, for modeling.
We appreciate everybody tuning in, and it was fun.
Okay, well, hopefully if you, when you get kind of finished, if you want to share the finished image, we'll share it
Okay.
on message, okay?
Sure. I
Thank
think
you
I
all.
will.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And y'all have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just